How to finally choose an axe parcel without regret or second guesses. In this video, I'm going to give you 4 key frameworks for making a decision on an axe parcel so that by the end, you'll know how to choose a property and not get caught up by delusion or paralysis by analysis. So why should you listen to what I have to say? Because my name is TJ Visuday, and I'm the founder and CEO of Axe Decentralized Real Estate. And I have to choose properties all the time with my wife. Not only do we choose our own parcels on every single Axe property, but we have to actually choose the Axe properties. And in our situation, if we get caught up by analysis paralysis, well, we wouldn't be able to make any new lands available. So what I'm about to give you are the frameworks that we use when we're opening up an Axe property and that we use to prevent ourselves from getting too perfectionistic or ignoring really amazing opportunities. If we go a little bit deeper, we've helped out over 50 families and counting choose their parcel of land. And by this point, after talking to hundreds of families, we've seen so many different patterns within families as they choose their parcel. Because we know this is one of the most important decisions you have ever made in your life. And so that brings up a lot of different healthy conflicts, arguments, discussions amongst yourselves about which parcel you're gonna pick. So watch all the way through because this video can save you months of confusion and decades of pain for choosing the wrong parcel, or even worse, taking the time to choose the right parcel and then having someone else come in and snatch up the parcel of your dreams. So in this video, we're gonna be addressing 2 types of people. You're gonna hear me addressing visionaries and you're gonna hear me talking about analyzers. Let's talk about the visionaries. I'm a solid example of a visionary, but for the most part, when I interact with families, there's always that one person who found us online or for whom the other family members, they found us online and then they immediately go to this family member because they know that this family member is the leader. They are the one who sees around the corner of time. They understand where the world is headed. They are a little bit riskier. They like to take a little bit more chance. And they're often the one pulling everyone along to ultimately join Axe. I call people like you visionaries because, again, you have the vision for what is possible on land. Then we have analyzers. Analyzers want to do things right. They're the ones who like to double check the details. They make sure that their parcel decision is airtight before moving forward. So typically, after the visionary comes along to check that everything is real, then they might go back and invite along the analyzers. I'm the visionary, but we also have a team of analyzers. And in this team of analyzers, they go through all of the legal restrictions on the land, the economics of the land, fertility, the beauty, the land use, and we ultimately look at where that area is headed in the long-term future to see whether or not that new Axe property is going to be the right thing. So analyzer visionary does not have to be male or female. It's also one is not better than the other. Visionaries are necessary. Analyzers are necessary in order to bring out the best out of any parcel choice. Either way, if you're watching this video, it should be because you've both done the work as visionaries and analyzers. You've watched the 2-hour Axe Masterclass that goes through everything we do as a company. You've gone through our deed restrictions video and you understand what our deed restrictions are, or you've read through the deed restrictions. And you've scheduled a visit to come visit a property in person. If and only if you've done those things, should you watch this video, because this guide is going to be your go-to resource for making decisions on a parcel before or after the property visit without regret. Because the ultimate thing that we want to do is we want to eliminate the analysis paralysis and eliminate the delusions so that we can proceed forward smoothly. So let's go into the number one killer of dreams, analysis paralysis. Here's how it typically plays out. First off, a family finds X, they love the mission, so they schedule a property visit and they're full of excitement, wonder, and mystery. They book a flight or they drive a few hours and they get to the property and they hop on the hayride. A little bit expecting to be underwhelmed, a little bit expecting that everything's too good to be true. There's no way that our properties are as good as what we advertise. And then something happens. Not only are properties as good as what we advertise, they are actually so much better that typically families will come back to us and say, it's better than I expected, and there's no possible way you could capture how good it is in person in a 1 minute, 30-second video over on Instagram. So I've seen families go there and frolic in the fields. I've seen husbands, 50-year-old men, take off their shoes and splash in little streams. I've seen wives start hugging trees and hugging grass because it's so amazing. Because it really is one of the first times in most people's lives that they've been out in the open, able to experience land unencumbered from the city and all the other things that are going on. But then a little twist happens, something unexpected. A lot of people, especially the analyzers, they start to short circuit a little bit because the property turned out too good. And now you're stuck. It's like if I like this parcel and I like that parcel and I like that parcel, and I can't really tell whether these three completely different parcels are better than one another. Do I actually like any of them? Maybe I don't like any of them. And so what I should do is I should just wait for another one in another state and another state and another state. And what this can turn into is families not only not making a choice in their parcel, but then chasing after grass that might be greener in another state again and again and again, and never actually choosing a parcel of land. Then coming to me and saying, why is this so hard? I just can't decide. Now, what just happened here? People come to us because finding good land was impossible. That was the first thing that triggered them to even follow us on Instagram or follow us on YouTube or find us on land.com. But then they're facing a situation where every single parcel is essentially perfect. So now choosing a parcel becomes impossible and no decision is made. Often for families who've been waiting for this for years, and they take even longer despite liking everything that they see. The core issue is that a lot of families tend to use the wrong filters and ask the wrong questions, therefore focus on the wrong things. This is frustrating for visionaries because visionaries will just be like, just choose something. We can just figure it out on our own. It's not that big of a deal. But the analyzers might get frustrated because they're like, it's important for me to find the perfect parcel. This is for my family. We can't choose something wrong. This is a decision worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Do not make me rush. And I want to prevent too much conflict with your own family in having this type of discussion. So if we go a little bit deeper, there's another big tragedy that occurs, and that is missed opportunities. So you can have visionaries arguing with the analyzers on what's going to matter, what doesn't matter, what's overthinking it, what's actually not been thought of enough, and they scour the choices. They finally pick a parcel, and they get devastated when they find out that because they took so much time, someone else came in and swoop, took that parcel of land. In other words, someone just claimed the parcel of their dreams. And I've even seen it where families will be like, it's okay, I'll get over it. It's not that big of a deal. And they really don't get over it. They come to me and we've had real counseling sessions talking about the fact that they don't know what they're going to do because it wasn't the thing that they ultimately wanted until they flip their mindset and start learning more of what I'm going to show you here. So don't let this be you. Use the 4 frameworks I'm about to give you to prevent this nightmare and avoid regret later. Framework number 1, choose what's available. A lot of people get stuck chasing this imaginary forever parcel, but it's often perfectionism in disguise. And perfectionism is how people end up with nothing. You want to start with the end in mind, but not chase perfection. Choose based on what's actually available, not what's simply potential. It's very easy, especially for visionaries, to say, and we could do this, and we could do this, and we could do this, and we can do this, and get caught up in a ton of plans that you're never going to actually execute on, or to focus on new states and new potential opportunities. It's better to actually examine the parcels that are currently available in the states that are currently available to get a real understanding of what a solid piece of land actually looks like. When you start interacting with the land, that is when the real fun happens, not before you started interacting with it. So you don't want to get caught up with the potential and the grass that's greener in some other property or in some other state. So don't just ask, where do I want to be forever? That question, it seems helpful, but it's a little bit intimidating and it's not going to help you out that much. A better question might be, what works for my family right now, given our current circumstances? That gets you to focus on what's actually occurring in your lives. Here's some other questions that you can ask instead. Where can we realistically move in the next 6 to 12 months? If you don't like what's currently available in a given state, then ask yourself, could you help start something in your area by becoming an Axe Angel? Because if you have cash and you want to move forward, there's states that you want to go to or you want to be in a certain state, that might be the route for you and your family. Or you might want to ask yourself, what's actually keeping you in your current location? And why do you want to stay in the area that you're currently staying? Little fun fact, over 50% of our properties are bought by families from out of state, and 25% of buyers have never even been to the state that they bought land in for their parcel. So don't trap yourself in false limits. Sometimes the place you think is home is really just the place you got comfortable. God often calls people to move physically or out of their comfort zone to fulfill a greater purpose. It's not always easy, but if you look at it, it's a pattern that exists throughout the Bible again and again and again and again and again. It's very rare that the great visionaries and great leaders of the Bible just stayed in the same place. So remember, faith is spelled R-I-S-K, risk. Moving can sometimes be a way for God to test you and test your faith and your obedience to see whether or not you're willing to leave what is known and leave what is comfortable to go to a new area. And from what I've seen so far, with the families I've interacted with, those moves almost always pay off. Plus, if we looked at it in the opposite scenario, okay, let's say it was the worst case thing possible, it's not permanent, okay? The decision isn't permanent. That's why I say don't get locked in, oh my gosh, it's the forever thing. You're not locked in forever. You could trade parcels, you could sell your land, you could join future properties in other states. Maybe you get something now in one state and then you build up what you want in somewhere else. Maybe you have a franchise in one state and you just focus on that, and then you build your forever home in another state that you haven't even considered. And ironically, choosing something right now is actually what gets you closer to building something forever, not the other way around. I know it might seem like, oh, well, that's short-term thinking if I focus on just what's available right now. But the reality is, because it gets you started and gets your foot in the door in the realities of what it's like to own land and manage a farm and build a home, it makes it easier as you continue to expand. So let's move on to framework 2. Understand the blank canvas. Imagine two people walk into an art store. The first person is an amateur painter and the other one is a master painter. The master and the amateur are both looking to go buy a blank canvas. So they're looking at this wall and the amateur is just overwhelmed at all of the blank canvases. He looks at them and he's like, man, which one should I buy? Should it be this blank canvas or this one? Why is this one $100? Why is this one $1,000? Is the $1,000 one that much better and we're going to have such a better painting? Is the $100 one better because, well, it's only $100 and still is a blank canvas, so who cares about it? Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But what would a master painter do? The master painter will just come in, and realistically, you could hand him any canvas and he's going to be able to move forward with this painting. He's barely even concerned with which canvas he might go for. He might have done his research. He might have had some experience with some of the parcels, but he'll just go in, choose whatever canvas is available right there at that moment, pick it up and leave the store, because the whole time he's not focused on the canvas as what makes the painting. He's focused on his own skills, and he's focused on the image that he wants to create onto that canvas. So the illusion here is that people act like they can't paint the same masterpiece on either canvas they might have available. So for example, if we look at these two parcels on Panoplia Ranch, parcel 30 and 41, they're both 10 acres. They both have lake access. They both have an open field. They're both flat. They both have a mound for building your home. They're both incredible. And I've seen people get stuck for weeks on which one of these two parcels to choose when they're, for all intents and purposes, exactly the same. Remember, good enough is better than perfect. And this is proven through psychological research in something called the paradox of choice, which states that we want options as humans, but the more options we receive in life, the less likely we are to be satisfied. So if I have a child and I give them 10 choices of soda pop, they're not going to be nearly as happy with their choice of soda pop, because they're going to be thinking to themselves, oh, it could have been the other one, it could have been the other one, it could have been the other one. But if I say, all right, your choices are Coca-Cola or Sprite, they're happy because they only had one or the other choice. You're the artist, your parcel is a blank canvas, and what matters is what you build on it, what you grow, and how you live, not the actual parcel itself. When I talked to Joel Salatin and I asked him this exact question, how do you choose parcels? He told me that he likes to go out of his way, because he's a master painter, he likes to go out of his way to sometimes choose the single worst pieces of land he can. He says the uglier, the more junkier it is, the better it is for him, because he's happy because, hey, it's land at the end of the day. And his own Polyface Farms, it started as a literal dust bowl where there was absolutely no grass whatsoever on the entirety of the fields of Polyface. And now, if you go out there, you'll see that Polyface is filled with tons of grasses because he was painting it like a master artist. So remember what you're buying here with Axe, right? We're not buying dust bowls like Joel Salatin, but it proves my point. We've already done the work, and you can rest assured that every Axe parcel gives you the essentials. It's got space, it's got road access, it's got amazing soils, it's got access to water, it's got autonomy, it's got ownership. Those are the main things to focus on here. It's not getting stuck on tiny little details. So let's move on to framework number 3. Don't spiral on money. The main problem that I'm talking about is when people start thinking only in terms of money, 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 and they completely forget about their soul, they forget about their heart, they forget about their vision, and I've got to say it, they even forget their own balls. It's unfortunate because they allow analyzers to come in and talk them down into, well, you know, we just gotta do this. This is the only thing that we have in our budget. This is the only possible thing that we could do. What's going to be the return on investment? They get so stuck in that mindset that they lose sight of the original way they even got here, which is some part of them, some part of their soul was yearning to escape Egypt and be out on the promised land. So these families, they might have been clear. They were excited. They're even like, okay, we got the funds ready, but then something happens. They get quiet, they pull back, and their brain starts spiraling. What if this is the wrong move? What if I need the money later? Is this a good investment of my money? What if I time the market? When will a franchise make money? How much money will a franchise make? How do I know if a franchise is going to make money? How fast will it possibly be? What if something goes wrong with the franchise? What if the prices drop and I overpaid for the land? What if I lock myself into a mistake that I can't ever do? Who this is about, by the way, is not people who just can't afford land. I'm talking about the people that can afford land, okay? They just don't because they get stuck in this spiral that I'm calling out right now. What's really happening is that it's fear trying to break your momentum. It's the enemy trying to capture you and capture your attention in scarcity. Let's never forget here what happened in the Garden of Eden. We could take two humans, put them in perfect abundance, and a little snake can come in, whisper into your ear, and make you perceive lack. That's what happened in the past, and that's what's happening now. That lack that gets perceived taints your entire perspective and can take the modern American equivalent of the Garden of Eden with 22 man-made ponds, each of them 5 million gallons each, that you've been asking for and praying to God for the last 4 or 5 years, and make you wonder, I don't know if I should choose the one with the lake or the other one with the lake. That's how nasty it can get. So, if you let this voice win, you don't just lose the parcel that you're interested in. You lose the clarity, you lose the conviction, you lose the momentum, and you lose the window you prayed would open for you. Land is a form of storage and wealth. You're not spending that money. In fact, you could say that the end goal of all money is to go back into land. That's why in Monopoly, the whole point of the game is to buy up the entire land. They made that game for no other purpose than to teach children about economics, and it's all based on real estate for that reason. Land is the only thing that is deflationary. Everything else is inflationary. We can make more money. But when you confuse the two, that's when you can get caught up. So, what are you getting when you get land? When you place your money into this land, you're getting your money placed in something that's tangible, that nobody can take away from you and your family, that can be sold and traded later, that comes with deeded ownership that you can pass down for generations, that can generate income through farming, through rentals, through leasing, through resale, and it provides food, shelter, safety, and memories for your children, all wrapped up into one. Legacy wrapped up into one. So reframe the risk. Fear turns land into a liability in your mind. But wisdom, biblical wisdom, godly wisdom must remind you, land is the original form of wealth. We see this in Genesis, where it says, now lift up your eyes from where you are and look to the north and south, to the east and west. All the land that you see, I will give to you and your offspring forever. The Lord was not promising Abraham just riches and that was it. He could have just left it at money. He was promising him land because that's even more powerful. If we look at Proverbs, it says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the sinner's wealth is passed to the righteous. Deuteronomy states, for the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land of wheat, barley, vines, fig trees, a land where you will eat bread without scarcity and lack nothing. God's idea of wealth wasn't stored in gold. It was abundance rooted in the land itself. And finally, it says in Matthew 25:14-30, to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, each according to his ability. The one who had received 5 went and traded them, and when he was able to double it, more was added unto him. And to the one who had only 2, when they doubled it, because they made a smart investment, more was given unto them. But to the one who was only given 1, when he buried it, and he was too stuck in analysis paralysis, money, scarcity mindset, not trusting what was given to him, it was taken away from him, because the Lord does not like it when people are sitting there money grubbing, unable to make valuable investments into themselves and adding unto themselves, their family, and unto others. So if you find yourself spiraling into money, pause, breathe, and remember, you're not losing money. You're not losing money. You've worked hard and you're exchanging dollars for dominion. In simple terms, point blank, the majority of your wealth will come from land, not just the franchise. So let's go through a few more examples of what I'm talking about because we have to get into the specifics of this. First example, focusing on profits, franchise profits, and not peace. This is a head versus heart situation. I see families and they sit there thinking, okay, this one might make more money, but it's got no views, and I don't like the land, and I don't like all of these other things. And deep down, this other one is the one that I'd actually like to raise my kids on because it's got the views, and it's got the trees, it's got the shade, and I can see myself hanging out in a hammock. And they won't listen to their soul, they won't listen to their heart and go for the one that they see for their children. They'll go and they'll just try to focus on the one that is for the franchise profits, thinking that that's going to be the end-all, be-all. And that type of decision, that's going to set you up for failure. Remember, look at what actually matters. Maybe it's the view, maybe it's the trees, maybe it's what feels right. But chasing a slightly better yield, I mean, at best, what are you going to get out of it? Is it going to be 5% more? 10% more? How much more are you going to get out of completely ignoring what your heart is truly telling you? We use a rotational grazing system anyway. So your franchise is going to make money wherever you are. So stop focusing on, oh, well, this is going to be the ultimate thing for my franchise. Start focusing on your peace. Start focusing on the memories and the views and the architecture and all the uses that exist out there. Don't chase pennies. Chase memories, because when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be sitting there thinking to yourself, oh, well, I'm so happy I made a 5% extra return on my franchise. You're going to be thinking to yourself, wow, I love that I saw my children playing by the lake. I love the sunset going through my wife's hair every single night when I was looking at her out on the land. Another example of what I'm talking about, right? Just brass tacks. Trees aren't the enemy, right? This is a big thing that happens. People will ignore parcels with trees because, again, franchising. There's no reason to ignore parcels with trees just because you want to make money with a franchise. Trees are not the enemy. They're beautiful. I personally like trees. I choose parcels with trees, and I'm the CEO of X. Why do I do that? Because I like privacy, and trees provide a ton of privacy. All right, next example of the money mindset taking over, trying to time the market. I'll meet families and they'll want to move forward, but they say, maybe I should wait for the interest rates to come down. Maybe the land will be cheaper next year. Maybe I should wait for the right deal. There's an economic downturn. Maybe I'll snipe when it's correct. The land we're talking about here is not a stock, okay? It's not crypto. It's not something you day trade. It's land with a mission. And it's a bad strategy to try to time the market because you're gonna miss the window entirely. Axe land is built differently such that in an economic downturn, it's only gonna become more valuable, not less valuable. And in an economic upturn, it's gonna become more valuable, not less valuable. Literally, every single day you see a parcel of land that we offer that is the cheapest it is ever going to be, period. So if we have to go a little bit deeper, the moment interest rates go down, I assure you, I and everybody else who's competent in real estate is going to raise the prices on whatever real estate we might be talking about. So if you're trying to time the market and wait until interest rates go down, you're kidding yourself, because we're just, okay, the points went down a few more. Let's rip it up. We'll add $10,000, $25,000 in price to that individual parcel. That's the reality of what it's like as a real estate person. That's what you do if you're an expert in real estate. So waiting is not winning. If you're waiting on the Fed, you're not going to save money. You're going to miss your shot. And legacy isn't time. You don't build a legacy by guessing what the Fed will do. You build it by staking ground and moving forward with conviction. So now let's go into the next issue that I see. And it's kind of the flip side to focusing too much on money in the terms of scarcity sense. It's when visionaries get a little bit delusional and they start overdoing it on their budget. What I've seen is I've seen people completely ignore the realities of their budget because they have big ideas, and it's amazing that they have faith, but they use that faith as a way of ignoring the actual situation that they might be in financially. And it can include having bad credit, having no down payment ready, not having their monthly income ready, not having a financial plan in place, and then getting mad at me or getting mad at my employees because we sold a parcel that they thought was their parcel when they couldn't get it under contract, they couldn't put in an earnest money deposit, they couldn't get approved for financing, they couldn't do anything to take action on that parcel. Another way that this might work is that we'll talk to families and they'll go out to a property, fall in love with the property, get excited, and then in one swoop say, we're gonna choose 4 different parcels worth $1 million, and then realize, oh, I can't actually afford $1 million worth of land right now. And then what happens is they collapse, they quit. If they can't have 4 parcels, they tell themselves they can't even have 1 because all of a sudden it doesn't match their vision and they think it's impossible to match the vision. When you talk to families about why can't it match their vision, they'll say something along the lines of, well, now it's too small. There's just not enough land for me to accomplish what it is that I would like to accomplish. But the truth is, that is a trap so that you go back to the suburbs as if it is better. As if, okay, if I can't have everything, I must go back to absolutely nothing. The advice here is to start small. You don't need 100 acres to be free. You just need a starting point. Here's a reality check. 5 acres is plenty of land. And this is coming from the same guy who started Axe focused on 10-acre parcels of land. But now that I've seen it, now that I've lived it and I understand, 5 acres is plenty. If we break it down mathematically, 1 acre is 43,560 square feet. 5 acres is 217,800 square feet. So, if you're like most people and you want to build a 2,150 square foot home, then that home would only take up about 1% of the total land available in a 5-acre parcel. Just do the math. 2,150 square feet is less than 1% of 217,800 square feet. That is an objective mathematical fact. So, you can build a dream home and it would only cover about 1% of the total area of your land. The other 99% of the area of your land is yours to build, grow, graze, harvest, and enjoy. So it's a little bit delusional to think it is impossible to still meet your vision if you cannot have all the parcels and all the land in the world. So stop saying it's not enough. It's not about the number of acres. It's not about the features. It's about how you use them. Stop thinking big equals better. Big isn't freedom. Owning what you can manage is freedom, but it starts with actually owning something. So be honest about where you are. Start with 1 parcel, 1 step, 1 decision. That's how you build legacy. All right, let's move on to framework number 4. Play the 20 questions game. When I was a kid, I remember buying at the store this really fun game called 20Q. And it said this: think of something, anything, and answer my questions. If I guess your thoughts within 20 questions, I win. If not, you win. This little toy that was available in the early 2000s did not have a huge microchip processor. It was only about $20, and yet it could guess everybody's decisions, even though there was millions of possible options. We can use the exact same strategy as the 20 questions game to arrive at our parcel. So how did the 20 questions game actually work if it was a technology from the early 2000s that didn't use AI? Well, what it did was it had a list of possible options that were realistically available, and then it asked yes or no questions like, is it alive, or can you hold it, or does it have fur? And it would narrow down options based on your answers, kind of like playing Guess Who, but way faster. And it would ultimately arrive at the correct answer every single time. Again, it didn't guess by being perfect, it guessed by eliminated what was not the right and true answer. So that's the secret to how Para and I and the Axe team whittle down to the right properties. It's not like we're looking at the perfect properties. Instead, what we do is we know how to eliminate properties that are completely unacceptable when we consider the Axe standard. Because the same way that we know that Michelin tires created the Michelin star system for rating restaurants, and now chefs think to themselves, man, I'm a Michelin star rated chef. We think of ourselves as the Michelin star, but for land. And we know, okay, when we go to a land and we go to an area, we want people to say, whoa, that property, Billy Joe's property, is about to be sold, and it's actually deemed an Axe property. It's one of the best properties in the entire world. And we do that because we know what we don't want, and we know how to filter out what is not right. So, if you don't take time to get clear on your vision, and don't take time to get clear on your non-negotiables, there is no amount of property visits that's going to help you. But you'll know if you've got the right balance when you start behaving like a painter working on your canvas, right? Your ideas should be focused on like, okay, no matter what parcel we create, I know that I'll be able to be handed something, but I can create these things no matter what. This is a non-negotiable, therefore I will create this no matter what, and nothing is gonna stand in my way. Not the interest rates, not anything. So again, the mindset is, I can't wait to get started working on this, and nothing is gonna stop me on this vision. Unclear equals stuck. You'll confuse yourself, you'll second guess everything, and you'll say no to everything because you never defined a yes. So if you are a visionary, you need to actually step into the role of the analyzers and learn how to say no more often. That is part of my secret. I'm a visionary, but I know how to say no to the things I don't want until we arrive at my vision. And if I'm an analyzer, then I'm gonna learn how to say yes more often, because perhaps the visionary sees something that I don't currently see, or sees something that exists outside of the spreadsheets. Again, when we play the 20 questions game, we want to use the goal of clearing out what is not right, because that is what ruins so many people's chances. It's the vague words. It's words like, people show up and I ask them, what do you want out of your land? What do you want out of your parcel? And they look at me every single time with the exact same answers. Well, I just want land that has a lot of freedom, a lot of beauty. Maybe I can run a franchise, and it's got access to water. If you go out to an Axe property and that's your mindset and that's all you've discussed with your family, and you think that's what it means to have chosen a property, you're going to be overwhelmed. I've seen it again and again and again, because I want freedom, and I want ownership, and I want beauty, and I want a franchise, and I want access to water is what comes standard with every single thing. That's like saying you're gonna choose a car and you're going, all right, so what car do you want? Well, I want wheels, and I want it to use gas, and I want a seat belt, and I want airbags. That doesn't help at all. So remember, all the parcels are free. All the parcels are beautiful. All the parcels have water access. That is the whole point of what we do. And if you don't have some of the water features you wanted, you can dig a well. You can build a pond. You can set up a rain catchment system. It's not that big of a deal. So do not use vague words such as freedom, beauty, and water as the only filters. Use your gut instinct, cut out what doesn't work, and then be happy with what is left by having a list of possible options, not just one single option, so you're not left disappointed. The question isn't what it looks like today, it's what you're willing to create, because it's a blank canvas, and what matters most is what you're willing to paint. So now that you're thinking clearly, this is the perfect time to tell you something that most people don't expect. We have a secret weapon, and that secret weapon is that we do have a land planner. His name is Connor, and he represents Ecclesia Design. He actually created and founded Ecclesia Design. Connor is there to help you out visualize what is possible on your parcel. He helps you work with, he works with you, and he helps you figure out your home site, your ranch setup, your garden areas, your water and solar areas, and everything in between. He's an expert if you, even as a visionary, kind of struggle with understanding how to take a flat piece of land or a mountainous piece of land and get the most out of it. Now, Connor's actually the most helpful after you choose your parcel. So don't be afraid if you still have some questions on what's possible to add into your land by the time you are placing a reservation and purchasing that land. It's perfectly okay to have a little bit of mystery in there. And in fact, you want that mystery because what you're gonna realize is there's a lot of things you didn't even realize you wanted or you didn't even know were possible that you could do with your land. Maybe there's things that are more efficient or less efficient. So don't think you have to have every single possible aspect of your vision already done before you choose a parcel of land. Connor will help you do that. But when I talked to Connor about how he disarms fears and how he does his no excuse land planning, he was able to help me out by sending a list of questions so that you can play your own version of the 20 questions game, and we call it the land clarity checklist. So what you need to do to use the land clarity checklist is stay with me to the end of this video. And in the end of this video, as a bonus, I will have a video 1-by-1 land clarity checklist that you can go through and you can answer all the questions for. I also have a PDF version of all of these slides and the land clarity checklist that you can use as essay prompts or conversation prompts with the analyzers in your life or the visionaries in your life. All right, so a quick caveat about deal breakers. Most people's must-haves are often built on fear, nonsense, and misinformation. So you want to watch out for having deal breakers that aren't based in reality. For example, a false deal breaker typically occurs when a person throws out the consideration for a parcel entirely just because it has a feature that they don't really know much about. So examples include saying, all right, here's my deal breaker. It's got a floodplain. It's got any part of floodplain. Floodplains, first off, don't mean that that land is flooded all the time. I've seen lands that are not considered floodplains that get more flooded than areas that are floodplains. Floodplains often have the best trees. Floodplains often are the best places for gardens. Floodplains often have unique areas. Floodplains might be the best places for water reservoirs. If we look at the Garden of Eden is by definition a floodplain. It was a land between 4 rivers, and what made it the Garden of Eden is the fact that all those rivers could flood out and provide for the nature of that land. So saying, oh, let me just throw out all floodplains doesn't really make sense because the literal creation of man was inside of a floodplain. It's a place that you were born into from the very beginning. So dismissing all of it outright might be a little bit extreme. Now, you can consider how much floodplain you might want to actually have, or whether or not you're willing to tolerate changing a construction piece for yourself for a floodplain, or maybe having a piece of a floodplain for gardening, but throwing it all out, that sounds like to me like a false deal breaker that comes from misinformation. Another one that comes from misinformation is saying, I don't want any parcels with hills. You can't build on, I don't know if it's possible. Can you even build on a hill? Is it possible to build on a hill? The problem with that mindset is, all right, first off, there's a lot of examples of building on hills. You see it all the time in Tennessee, for example. There's house after house after house that is built on hills. And people will literally drive past these houses on hills and then ask if it's possible to build on a hill. It clearly is. But the big thing here is knowing and understanding what level of hill, what level of slope you are or are not willing to tolerate. Hills can have many great features. You might want to build a city on a hill. You might want to build a home on a hill. You might want the views that come from that hill. You might want the privacy, the protection that comes from that hill. But maybe what you're trying to describe is, if you get specific, not vague, it's that you don't want a very steep hill. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Forests. A lot of people, they will throw out any land that has forests and they'll say, oh, I don't want to get in there. You can't use it for franchising. You can't build a home in there. It's too many trees. How are you going to cut down the trees? It's not that expensive to cut down trees. The trees provide a lot of shade. They provide a lot of privacy. They provide cooling. In hot states, I assure you, you want the trees. And ultimately, cows actually love trees more than open pastures. If you look at cows and their behaviors, when it's hot, they will go out to the trees and they like to scratch their head on the trees as a scratching post. A lot of farmers, in fact, have to, they clear out all the trees, they have a pasture, and then they have to add in structures for the specific reason of recreating all the benefits that come in from having a ton of trees. Another example of a false deal breaker is saying, I'm going to not look at any land that doesn't have any ponds, doesn't have any streams. You can build a pond in like a week. It's not very difficult to add in a pond. So dismissing a piece of land just because it doesn't have a pond doesn't make a lot of sense if it otherwise has every single feature that you want, versus another parcel that does have a pond but doesn't have the features that you would otherwise want. So again, it's not that these things aren't a concern, it's just that sometimes people ignore parcels entirely. Here's how you can actually recognize a real deal breaker, right? It's a deal breaker if I couldn't even hand you that parcel of land for free because you would think of it as such a liability. Let that think in. Let that sink in. You know it's a real deal breaker if I could not give you that land for free because it would be such a headache for you to have that land. Other examples of real deal breakers include the parcel you're interested in blows your entire budget and you literally have nothing else to build. Nothing else left to build. That makes a lot of sense. Or it might be a deal breaker if it's on a hill and the slopes are greater than 15% and you don't have the money to account for some of the grading that might have to occur, or for some of the structural differences. It might be another $50,000, maybe even $75,000 in structural differences for building on that hill. That is a more reasonable deal breaker. Or you have no plan for sun access and you don't plan on cutting down anything because you don't believe in cutting down trees. That makes sense as a deal breaker. So don't miss out. If your deal breaker is based in fear and not fact, you might be walking away from the best land you'll ever see. All right, so here's the recap before we wrap things up and talk about the most important piece of all of this, which is, now that you've chosen a parcel, how you actually lock it in. Framework number one, choose what's available. Choose based on what's here now, not someday. It's not about your forever plan. It's about what works for your family right now. Because ironically, choosing something right now is what actually gets you closer to building something forever. Framework two, understand the blank canvas. You're not buying a finished product, you're building a masterpiece. The land is the canvas and you're the artist. The purchase of your land is just the start of your journey, not the end. So don't be looking for everything to be perfectly there. We can build it up, we can change it, we can steward it. Quite literally, to explain this to you, literally that is your purpose here on earth. Those were the first words that God said about you when he created you. He said, let us create man in our likeness, in our image, that he may take dominion over the land. That was the point, and over all the creatures that were out there. Framework three, don't spiral on money. Don't let fear-based thinking, perfectionism, or budgeting, or denial, or delusion block your future. Land is where wealth begins, not where it ends. The majority of your wealth will come from land, not a franchise. And framework number four, play the 20 questions game. use the 20 questions game to get clear by identifying what's not right first. And the more honest you are, and the more you have conversations with your analyzers to go back and forth and come to agreement, the faster the decision will become obvious. And I assure you, when you pray and you let the Holy Spirit into your heart, and you have a conversation, because it says wherever 2 or 3 of us gather, there you are among us, and the Holy Spirit. When you have that there, it will feel obvious within all of you, deep in your heart and your soul and your guts and your mind and your balls. All right, let's talk about next steps, how to lock in your parcel. This is simple, but it's important because now that you're ready, you have to accomplish on these steps or else you will miss out on your parcel. Step 1, you have to fill out the contract preparation form. This lets us make sure that your contracts are pre-filled with the correct information, saving time and avoiding mistakes. We need you to put in your actual government name or the name of whatever entity it is that you're going to be using, the LLC that you may be using to buy your actual parcel. You need to show whether you're using cash or using financing, and you need to either show proof of funds or show some clear plan to get that financing. It's very easy to fill out the contract preparation form. It takes no more than 5 minutes, and you literally go one by one. It could not be easier or simpler. All you have to do to use the form is message Drew at axereal.com or Reese at axereal.com, or you can message JD, and we will send you the link. From there, you just follow the steps. It only takes 5 minutes. Step 2 for choosing your parcel is dependent on whether you are an Axe land stakeholder or if you are a new family to Axe. So let me address the Axe land stakeholders first. And for the people who are new to Axe, the main idea is these are people who reserved for land in states before they even knew whether or not land in that state was going to be fully available. For example, in Tennessee, we're opening up Creole Ranch, and we've got land stakeholders that have put in their reservation for Creole Ranch a year and a half ago. Okay, so this is for them. If you are a land stakeholder, what you're going to do is you're going to submit your top 5 parcel choices so we can match you based on your place in the draft. So, to understand, let's say you are the 5th person in line to choose your parcel as a land stakeholder. You're going to put in your top 5 choices. Parcel 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If someone else took parcel number 1 ahead of you, then you're not going to get that one. It might be number 2. If someone took parcel number 2, then it might be your 3rd choice. If they took your 3rd choice, then it might be your 4th choice. If they took your 4th choice, then it will go to your 5th choice. So on and so forth until at least 5. The benefit of this is that it allows us to speed along in the choice of parcels. But the other benefit of this is that it's going to put you in the right mindset of not having analysis paralysis and instead looking at the overall choices of parcels so that you're not getting too far stuck on one individual parcel of land thinking that it's quote unquote yours, even though by every definition it is not yours. Now, an important caveat on this for the land stakeholders: fill out as many parcels as possible, right? Because we're going to go through the list and match you based on the top ranked choice. So the minimum is to put in 5 parcels, but if you put in 10 parcels, that gives us more opportunities to make sure that you get matched up with the parcel that you actually want. So you're not limited to just 5. Put in 10 if you want. Put 15 for all I care, but don't put anything less than 5 choices or you might be very disappointed. If you're not in the parcel draft, if you haven't placed a reservation yet, what is your process? All you have to do is simply reach out to us after a property visit and fill out the contract preparation form. Or even without a property visit, you can just do it beforehand. If you're not in the draft and if you're not a land stakeholder right now, then all you have to do is simply reach out for us and fill out the contract preparation form. Remember, your parcel isn't locked until you do the next few steps, but your process is going to be simpler because by the time you're doing things Everybody else would have already chosen their parcel through the parcel draft. So how do you lock in your parcel if you're someone new to access centralized real estate? Well, to lock it in, you must submit proof of funds or get pre-approved. You must sign your contract, and you must send in a 1% earnest money deposit into escrow. Sending money into escrow is the standard for the real estate industry. It's how we actually take a person seriously, and it's the contingency for which we know that a contract is officially in place. If you do not put in that 1% earnest money deposit into escrow, then we will not take your contract seriously, even though you filled out the contract preparation form. After you do those three things, you submit your proof of funds, you submit your pre-approval, you get under contract, you put in your 1% earnest money deposit, you'll get to have a one-on-one call with me. And on the call, I will gladly answer any questions you might have and help you out with your transition as you get ready to buy your parcel of land. It's a great opportunity for me to get to know you. And even though I have outsourced many different pieces of the business by this point, as we've grown from just 2 people, Kara and I, to now 20 people, it is one thing that I do not outsource entirely. I still am there on one-on-one calls to meet and greet and introduce myself to every single family. So if you want to ask me questions directly, this is your opportunity, but I have to be able to take you seriously after you get under contract, show proof of funds, and put in your 1% earnest money deposit. Once that's done, you're almost there. The next step is to just fund your whole parcel, and then you're the owner of your land. After that, we'll put you in touch with Connor, the land planner, and he'll help you visualize the land plan for your parcel. And when you figure out the land plan for your parcel, you'll know exactly where to put fencing in for your franchise. You'll know where your homes are going to go. You'll know where your Airbnbs are going to go. And if you talk to Zach, our choice architect, Zach will tell it. Your architecture should change depending on where you put your home. So that's why you want to talk to Connor. He's going to place it in a certain area. And when he places your home in a certain area, that's going to affect the sunlight in that area. That's going to affect the wind in that area. That's going to affect the shadows in that area, which affects your solar units and everything else like that. So you want to get your plan with Connor, then take that, use that to inform your decisions with Zach, or talk to Layla, the Axe Homes Project Success Manager, who will show you pre-done and pre-estimated designs that are all packaged up for you. She can match you up with the perfect home for your land. And you can talk to my wife, Kara, to place an order for your franchise. Now, if you're just going with the standard franchise, it's $100,000, that's it, then you'll just get the standard franchise that we have for that area. But if you're interested in getting maybe 1.5 times a franchise or 2 franchises, maybe even 3, 4, 5 franchises, then you can talk to Kara and we'll help you make a bulk deal in purchasing your franchise. And that's it. That's it. That's all you need to know when it comes to actually choosing a parcel of land. That is the main framework. In the next few minutes, what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you the bonus exercise of going through the land plan checklist. But remember, if you don't decide, someone else will. And you don't need to be perfect. So with that being the case, let's move on to the land clarity checklist. You can pause the video here. You can go get a pen and paper if you'd like, or you can open up a chat window, maybe ChatGPT. I like using a program called Craft, wherever it is that you take notes. And you can also download the PDF of all the questions I'm about to show you below using the link in the description. We're going to go one by one with each question. And the key here is that I'm not going to convince you one way or another about your decision. Asking me or asking Connor to pick everything out for you is, to me, almost as insane as asking someone to pick who your spouse is going to be or pick who your children are going to be. It's an important relationship you're going to have for the rest of your life, so you need to come to that conclusion on your own based off of your own ability to judge for yourself using your own gut, your own heart, your own soul, and your own balls. So Let's talk about category number 1, vision and people. The first question you need to ask yourself is, what is your vision for the property? What is it that you have as an end goal? What does it feel like to live on there? What is the image that comes up? What is the emotion that comes up with the land that you think of? What is that vision for the property? Who is this site really for? Is this just for you when you retire? Is it for you and your kids? Is it for you and your kids and their kids? Is it for you and your parents? Is it going to be for Airbnb guests? What are you willing to change about the land to make it work? Are you looking for land that you don't have to do anything with? Or are you very excited about working with the land and making a ton of different changes? Do you need space for multiple buildings or just one or two? Multiple homes or just one or two? A big mistake is staying surface level. This has to be of visceral value. How does this land affect your soul? How is this land going to connect to your mission with the Lord? Don't just plan for Airbnb guests. Airbnb is nice, but don't rely on it for all of your decisions. There are people who have successful Airbnbs and are completely miserable. You want this land for you and your family. Do you really want Airbnb guests? Some people, the answer is absolutely. Other people, the answer is absolutely not. Your land, again, is almost going to be like a marriage. So, what are you willing to put up with for the rest of your life? And what do you think maybe you can give up because it's not that big of a deal? What do you plan to build specifically? Do you want a home? Do you want a barn? Do you want gardens? What type of gardens? Do you want raised beds? Do you want a food forest? Are you going to have Airbnbs? What are your absolute must-haves? Why are they must-haves? What are your nice-to-haves? What are things that are like, that'd be pretty cool. It'd be pretty cool if you did have it. What is your planned land budget? How are you going to actually meet that budget? How are you going to pay for the monthly payments in that budget? How are you going to pay for the down payment in that budget? What is your planned total build budget? Most people tend to overestimate what they can get in their budget. This is harsh, but it's the truth. It happens all the time in real estate. People will go and get excited and say, I only have a build budget of $500,000 and I want a 3,000 square foot home and I want a pool in my backyard. And then they get slapped with the reality that the only possible way to have 3,000 square feet and a pool in your backyard might be to have a budget that is $800,000. So what are you going to do if your budget for what you want is going to be way over? How are you going to use the land? How often are you going to visit it? Is it going to be every day? Is it going to be every week? Is it going to be every month? Is it going to be once a year? How do you want to use the existing resources? How are you going to use the trees? How are you going to use hills? How are you going to use the water? How are you going to use the sun? Are you planning with the end in mind? Who is that end for? Is there enough space for your full build out? Let's say you only think right now you want this parcel for yourself. Are you leaving space so that those who inherit the land might be able to build later on? Which property gives you the most opportunity, not just the most comfort, and not just the most profits? Deal breakers. What are your absolute must not haves? Why are these deal breakers? That's it. That is how you choose an axe parcel without regret or second guessing yourself. Thank you so much for sticking with me. My name is TJ Visuday, and I'll see you out on the ranch.